10 ways to still find a cash flowing rental property in 2023 and moving into 2024. Let's go. So it's no secret that finding a cash flowing rental property in 2023 is damn near impossible. I mean, it's harder than being a 5'6" dude trying to date on Tinder. You just ain't ever getting a match, my guy. And if you think you're gonna match with a cash flowing rental property in 2023 or 2024, well then you're looking for a unicorn. There's a few strategies that you can use that I've used to actually make rental properties cash flow, even though we are at an unprecedented time in terms of affordability. So here's your quick history lesson. Why is it so hard right now? Why is it so difficult to find that cash flowing rental property? Well, we have all-time high prices and 20, 30-year record high interest rates. And when you add record high interest rates and high prices, they make for an unbelievably, monumentally expensive monthly payment. And that monthly payment means that it doesn't cash flow because you're giving all of the profit you could have gotten a couple years ago to the bank in the form of a payment and interest. And so people who are interested in getting invested in real estate are saying to themselves, all the information that I found online says I need to find a property that positively cash flows, but everything's negative. Or maybe I'm getting 1 or 2%. Is it even worth it for me to invest in real estate if I'm getting 1 or 2%? Now, the answer that I'm going to give you is different than what I've heard Bigger Pockets advocating for. Recently, I've heard David Green and some of the other hosts on Bigger Pockets tell you to stop prioritizing cash flow or to not be as concerned with cash flow and instead look at other forms of getting paid by real estate. Principal pay down, building up your equity, tax breaks, and those are all fine and dandy. But the bread and butter of why you want to get into real estate is for the positive monthly cash flow. That's what you use to replace your income with and retire and exit the rat race early. So I disagree with them and I think you still can get cash flow. In this video, I'm going to give you 10 tactics and strategies that I've used personally, minus 1, 9 strategies I've used personally, and 1 bonus strategy that will help you still find a good cash flowing deal. So why don't we jump right in? Now this list is in no particular order, so I'm just going to go ahead and open up with creative financing. Now, creative financing is an umbrella term that incorporates a whole bunch of different non-traditional financing strategies that can allow you to buy real estate. However, it's become mostly synonymous with Pace Morby and his subject to and assumable loan strategies. Now, this is the only one I haven't done. I've never assumed a loan. Of the 15 rentals I own in the 3 different states and the 5 years of investing in real estate that I've been doing it, I haven't done an assumable loan. But it is a very powerful strategy. Now, for each of the items on my list, I'm going to give you a couple of pros and a couple of cons and briefly describe the process. So with a subject to or an assumable loan, what you're doing is you're assuming an existing mortgage. Rather than get a crappy 2023 interest rate, assume the nice, beautiful 2020 interest rate that might have been 3%. Wow, if I could just take over their existing payment, I can still make this property cash flow. So I could pay them out their equity portion, take over their existing payment, and sail away into the future on the cash flow river. Now, a lot of people question the creative financing route because they're worried about the due on sale clause. And I know Pace has come out with a bunch of videos that say, don't worry about the due on sale clause. I've never even seen it be enacted. And fair enough, I believe you, Pace. But here's the problem. You were doing this strategy at a time where interest rates were continually going down. And the bank was saying to themselves, well, if they're going to assume a higher interest rate and we don't have to give them a lower interest rate, that's actually good for us, the bank. But now things have changed. Interest rates are now much higher than they were when that loan was first taken out. So the bank has to sit there and say, well, do we want to make the 3% that we were making, or do we want to take this opportunity to bump people up to a 9% interest rate and make a bunch of extra money? What do you think the generous, altruistic bankers are going to be deciding on, huh? Now, I'm not going to say that we know whether or not people are going to start falling prey to the due on sale clause. I would say we don't have enough information about what banks do in this type of market as opposed to the previous type of market. But that's creative financing. Now let's move on to another part, item number 2 on the list, but it's still another part of creative financing, and that's seller financing. I often call seller financing the holy grail of real estate. I've done multiple seller financing deals. I just closed on one a couple of weeks ago. Now, for those of you who don't understand what seller financing is, it's the ability to just make your terms up. Everything's up in the air. Purchase price, the interest rate, the down payment, the amortization schedule, 100% negotiated between you and the seller to be whatever you want it to be. Now, here's the thing. Typically, the seller's going to want their price. And so your response to them should be, well, Mr. Seller, I can give you your price if you give me my terms. You want 20% more than what this house is actually valued at on the MLS? No problem. But I want to not put very much money down, and I want a very low monthly payment. Why do we want a monthly payment that's low? So we can cash flow and sail down the river of cash flow. Now, the downside is that most sellers are trying to gouge you, the buyer. They want unrealistic purchase price, unrealistic amount of money down, and an unrealistic interest rate with a shorter than necessary time frame and a big balloon payment. Now, when they come to the table with this, you know that they're either extremely uneducated or they're some type of shark and they're very educated. And what you need to understand is that they need to have one of two things. Do you want a larger down payment and a lower monthly payment so I can cash flow better? Or maybe a higher monthly payment, I don't cash flow quite as much, but I put almost nothing down, so my cash on cash return is still really good. Those are the two different balances you have to strike between giving too much money up front and too much money in the monthly payment, or not doing that. Make sure that you understand that just because someone offers seller financing doesn't mean that it's a good deal. You actually have to get the right terms that work for you. Item number 3, converting your long-term rental to a short-term rental or a medium-term rental. Now, maybe the numbers don't work at a long-term rental, but guess what? Sometimes you can make more money with a short-term rental. So let me give you an example of my duplex that I just converted from a long-term rental to a short-term rental. The long-term rental was making $2,150 a month. But after completing my very first month as a short-term rental, I made $2,850 a month. That's $700 more a month for one side of my duplex. Now, I think that $700 bump is actually going to go from $2,850 up to over $3,000, maybe even up to over $3,500, because there will be more opportunity for people to book in advance, and I will get the status of superhost, which will allow me to charge more. So my very first month, I had $700 a month increase, and I think it's probably going to end up being $1,000 or maybe even a $1,500 a month increase. If you can guarantee that much extra rental income, well, that allows your property to cash flow better and give you a better cash-on-cash return. But a word of caution. Not all short-term and mid-term rentals are created equal. For instance, you might want to use this strategy in New York or Las Vegas. Well, guess what New York and Las Vegas just did? They outlawed and banned short-term rentals. So you need to be aware of what your local real estate investing market is thinking about doing with short-term rentals. If you buy a rental property and it cash flows beautifully as a short-term rental, but then it gets outlawed or you don't do as well as you thought because you bought in a bad area and no one wants to go rent there, does it still work as a long-term rental, or is it a negatively cash flowing property? Now, of course, there's workarounds around it. Short-term rentals are banned, but mid-term rentals aren't. You actually sign a lease. It's just not a year-long lease. It might be a month or 2 months or 3 months. So you need to understand the short-term rental, mid-term rental game, but don't write them off. They are valid forms of real estate investing, and I was baffled at how simple it is to learn Airbnb. I've been doing long-term rentals for years. My very first month on an Airbnb, it was not that hard for me to pick up. It was not that hard to understand the app. It wasn't that hard to decorate the unit over there and furnish it out. I'm a single dude in my 30s. If I could decorate it to a point where people are telling me they like the way it looks, I'm sure most of you can figure it out, or there's a woman in your life who can come save the day. Item number 4, a cheaper purchase price. Now this one seems pretty self-explanatory, and I get it. Well, Mike, duh, of course I could get a better cash flowing rental property if prices will come down, but that's one of the problems. Mike, prices won't come down. We've been hoping and praying and watching every Crash Bro channel that there is for the last 5 years, begging for a crash, and they've been calling for a crash for 5 years straight, and it's amazing. It ain't come yet, but I'm still going to keep subbing to the channel and hoping that it's in the future. Good luck with that. I understand that it's hard to get prices to come down, but there is softness in prices if you know where to look. Let me explain. In every market, whether it's good or bad, there's always forced sellers. During the Great Recession, there was a lot of forced sellers. That's actually what tanked the real estate market, was there was too many forced sellers, and it was skyrocketing the inventory and dropping prices. Right now, there's not a lot of forced sellers, but there are some, because there's always people who are dying, there's always people who are getting divorced, and there's always people who are depressed that they live in a place like Seattle where it rains 9 months of the year and they want to get the flip out of here. I don't blame them. So there's always some forced sellers out there, but how do we find them? Well, my suggestion to you would be to start looking on your MLS, and me personally, I just use realtor.com, and look specifically for listings that are over 90 days old, especially if they already have price drops. Now, there's some people who are just throwing something out on the market and letting it sit there forever. Hey, if somebody buys it, great, I'll sell. But if they're dropping their prices, if it's been on the market for 90 days and they've dropped their price once or twice, you need to do what Michael Zuber and Patrick Bet-David refer to as giving a disrespectful offer. I want you to be embarrassed about your offer. I want your real estate agent to be embarrassed for you and be like, I don't really want to write this one up. Make a disrespectful offer. A lot of the times, you're not even going to get a response. They might not even say anything to you. But as that listing seasons and gets older and older, or you see another price drop, make the same disrespectful offer again later. At some point, it's either going to sell, they'll take it off the market, or you'll have found the motivated seller who needs to get rid of the property. And maybe you eventually get a response back. Maybe they come down to your price. I have a lot of people that reach out to me on Instagram to talk to me about their investing stories and successes, and I get people telling me left and right that they watched a property for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. They finally made a ridiculous offer, and it got accepted. Just like asking the pretty girl out at the gym that I talked to earlier today, you can't get a yes unless you're willing to also be told no. Don't worry, it's me, it's your boy. Of course, nobody says no to me, but I was trying to relate to you guys. Anyways, you can't get a yes unless you're willing to also hear no. So make those disrespectful offers. All right, number 5, wholesalers. And you might be saying to yourself, well, how does a wholesaler necessarily get me a better option? And wholesalers typically want to deal in all cash. I don't understand, Mike. And this is where I think there's a little secret sauce that I'm doing that other people aren't. This is the seller finance deal that I just got. I got it through a wholesaler who negotiated the deal on my behalf. A wholesaler. A wholesaler brought me a seller finance deal where I only had to put $3,000 down. And then I paid 0% interest on that deal, $400 a month, no interest for the next 4 years, and it'll be paid off. It's a very cheap house in Indiana. It's a $20,000 house. That's why it's so cheap. But let's talk about why partnering with a wholesaler is a fantastic option. Wholesalers are already targeting who? Desperate buyers that need to sell. Wholesalers are already doing what? Papering a market with mailers, sandwich board signs, billboards, and making phone calls, pulling lists from the county of foreclosures so they can go knock on people's doors. They're doing the hard work to find motivated sellers. So piggyback off of their work. But instead of just doing the all cash option, educate them on what seller financing is. Hey man, you're going to these prospective sellers and saying, I want to buy your house for 50 cents on the dollar. And most people can nowadays go on Zillow and say, I'm not going to sell you my $100,000 house for $50,000. That's a ripoff. I know I need to sell it now and it's got some work and stuff, but 50% off is too much of a discount. Wholesalers get told no all the time. But what if they had an extra tool? What if they could offer seller financing? Hey, I get it, 50% off, you don't want that. What if we do 30% off? What if instead of selling your $100,000 house for $50K, you sold your $100,000 house for $70K, but we do a down payment so you have some cash in your pocket and we make payments to you over the next several years. And if there's an interest rate on it, you'll actually still get your $100,000 because you'll get a little extra money in interest. These are the conversations wholesalers need to be having with prospective sellers because it's an extra tool for them. Now, the wholesaler is mostly concerned with getting his assignment fee, and I don't blame him. So what's going to happen for you, the buyer? Well, I'm going to have to pay the down payment to the seller, and I'm going to have to pay the assignment fee. But if the down payment to the seller and the assignment fee aren't too much money out of pocket, and I can get good enough terms, again, sometimes with a 0% interest rate like I just did, good enough terms that the property cash flows, I have no problem with doing any of this. But a lot of wholesalers aren't using seller financing because they know one thing and one thing only. Wrap it up under contract, get the assignment free, assign it to an investor, and bounce and move on to the next deal. But if people tell them no, they now have an extra tool to say, all right, no to this, but what if we can get you more money and get you paid over time? Would that be something you're interested in? And there's a whole other group of motivated sellers out there who are interested in that strategy. So you need to partner with wholesalers. You need to educate the wholesalers on what you want them to offer. And then you need to come through and make sure that everybody gets paid and that you're a fantastic investor because your reputation matters. Point number 6, value add and the Burth strategy. Now, a lot of people are saying, Mike, the Burth strategy sucks right now. It's absolutely garbage. And don't get me wrong, I get you 100%. In fact, I got burned, no pun intended, burned on one of my Burth strategies because I did it when interest rates were going from 3% to 6% and a lot of my cash flow got eaten up. Now, it was still a positively cash flowing deal and I made money and made equity. It just wasn't as good as I would have wanted it to be. But you can still do value add. And value add's a very powerful strategy. If you can partner with a wholesaler to buy something like the property I just got for $20,000, but day one it's actually worth $50,000, and when I'm done remodeling it'll be worth $120,000 to $150,000. That value add may be so powerful that you can still figure out how to get cash flow out of it. And let me explain why. If your value add and your Burth strategy is partnered with tip number 7, which is a conversion or an addition, you may be able to get cash flow. So the $20,000 property that I purchased is 5 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2 kitchens, upstairs and downstairs. Now, what it could rent for at 5 bedrooms is, maybe $1,500, $1,600 a month in Indiana. But if I divide it into a duplex, I can now rent it for $1,200 on the bottom unit and $1,000 on the top unit. I can go from $1,500 or $1,600 a month to $2,200 a month by doing what? Value add, Burth strategy, conversion. I'm converting a large single family house to a duplex. Maybe you're converting a large single family house with a large garage to an ADU or a DADU. Maybe you're building a DADU. So there's strategies you can use to take the usable space you already have and make it more rentable and squeeze more rental income out of it. Now, I mentioned the Burth strategy. People are saying, well, yeah, but Mike, I don't want to have to do a cash out refinance on the back end when interest rates are so bad, that's going to kill my monthly cash flow like you talked about earlier. You're right. But what if you incorporate my new strategy that I've used on the last 3 deals I've done called the slow Burth strategy? The problem with the Burth is it forces you to refinance within 6 months of entering into the deal. You might be refinancing at a time that really sucks. And when you take that loan to a lender, you have to pay them principal and interest. And principal plus interest is a very expensive monthly payment. But what if you partnered with a private money investor and just paid them interest only? Hey, instead of going to the bank for $60,000, what if I go to a private investor for $60,000 and I pay them 10% on their money? Well, that's a pretty good deal, but I'm not giving them any of the principal back. Mike, what happens when I have to give them the principal back? That's when you set a time frame between 5 to 8 years to pay back your private investor. At any time between the next 5 to 8 years, I can complete the Burth strategy with a bank. Then the bank gives me the money that I give to them. They're all paid off. But because I paid them interest only, I was able to cash flow for that 5 to 8 years. Now, if you want a better documented version of this strategy, a dedicated video to it, please look down in the description. I'll post one there. Because this is a complex strategy, but it's unbelievably powerful, and it's what I'm using to supercharge my ability to do more projects and create more cash flow, even at a time when interest rates suck. Don't underestimate the Burth strategy. Don't underestimate the value add conversion strategy. It's very powerful right now. Large single family houses, make them into duplexes. I promise you'll get more total rent than you would have if it was just a single family home. Now we're going to round out the last 3 things on the list. And these 3 are the last for a reason, because they're a little bit harder or more unattainable. So number 8, look at a different market. Maybe you live in expensive Seattle or expensive New York or expensive California. And this is what I've been saying forever. You live in an expensive coastal market, invest in the Midwest. Unfortunately, even the Midwest is becoming less and less cash flow friendly now because other people are moving there and interest rates are just destroying everything everywhere. But there are still markets that cash flow better. You can still get cash flow in Indiana. You can still get cash flow in Alabama. You can still get cash flow in a lot of these cheaper real estate markets. But there are unique challenges and hurdles that come with these markets. Oftentimes they're in more depressed areas, higher crime areas. It's very difficult to invest at a distance, especially if you're used to investing locally. You have to build an entire team and get reliable boots on the ground that can help you with managing a portfolio at a distance. That's what my entire YouTube channel has been dedicated to for years, as I've been investing at a distance from Seattle in Indiana for the last 4 years. So if you want more information on that, like the video, sub to the channel, be responsible. And by the way, fellas, I heard that if you don't like this video and sub to the channel, your next appraisal is going to come in 20% low. All right, I'm just the messenger. I don't want that bad juju for you. So like the video, sub to the channel, or your next deal is just going to get tanked. I don't want that to happen to you. All right. Okay. Number 9. Buy all cash. Oh, well, great, Mike. Yeah, wonderful. They can cash flow, but I just dumped a ton of money into this deal, so my cash on cash return isn't that great. And fair enough, that might be the case. That's where I would recommend the slow Burth strategy I talked about earlier, but it still doesn't change the fact that if you do buy all cash, you will get significantly more cash flow. It's an option that you can use. I've purchased properties all cash and then found my private investor 6 months to a year later that then comes in to partner with me for my slow burst strategy. It sucks to have to wrap that much money up in a deal. But if you do it, at least that money's making more money than probably a savings account. You could probably still get an 8, 9, 10% return on the all cash purchase, as opposed to squeezing out a 2% return with $18 of positive cash flow like I'm seeing in most of the markets around the country right now. So I'm not saying this is the first thing you should do, but it is a possible option or strategy you could use. And it might just be a temporary one. You buy a good deal while you look for that private investor. Now, number 10 is the math of time. As my good friend Dion loves to say, never underestimate the math of time. A deal may not cash flow super well day one. But you know what? With some rental increases and some time, everything looks good. At the end of the day, if you can figure out a way to use one of the other 9 strategies that I gave you to get into a deal, even if it's not beautifully cash flowing like there were a couple of years ago, if you can still get a decent amount of positive cash flow, a good cash on cash return for your area averages and for your area's market, if you can get good and great deals, nothing will happen over time except that it will get better. We don't care about the value of the property. Values go up and down. Rent prices, however, are unbelievably consistent. I've done whole videos dedicated to what rents have done in depressions, what rents have done in recessions, and what rents have done over 115 years. And the secret is there has never been a 5-year period of time in the history we have tracked rents for over 115 years where rents were ever down. They always go up. So if you can use one of these 9 strategies to get into a property and cash flow, you give it 5 years and you're going to be happy. Nobody in 2029 is going to be looking back at 2024 and saying, man, I really wish I hadn't bought that property. It ain't going to happen, bro. It's going to be worth more, most likely. It's going to be renting for more, most likely. And if there's an opportunity to refinance in the future, you'll be sitting there like, man, I'm certainly glad I got this, because now I don't have to compete with everybody. Because once interest rates go down, everybody floods the market again and you get outcompeted and outbid on everything. Right now, your competition has left the chat. You are alone, soloing this game of real estate. So freaking get out there, level up, get on your game, make it happen. Leave a comment down below if I missed anything. I appreciate you guys as always for watching. We'll catch you next time.